Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to pick up on another consequence of the extreme Tory Brexit, which was pointed out last year but has since become reality and increasingly newsworthy. So HMRC have changed tax rules, VAT rules, which have placed an administrative burden on the companies supplying the goods. Now, UK firms arguably have no choice but to comply with any extra Brexit bureaucracy or they move abroad, as actually quite a few have. But firms, from the EU, as well as elsewhere in the world, because this doesn't just affect companies in the EU, have got to weigh up whether it is worth continuing to supply UK customers. And it seems that an increasing number have decided to actually boycott the UK because it's not really worth it, and that has diminished our choice as consumers. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, some may have noticed I used again Ian Blackford's phrase extreme Tory Brexit again. I think I'm going to use that particularly to distinguish between the essential aspects of Brexit. I know Brexit itself wasn't essential, but if you were going to go ahead with leaving the EU, there were some things that were going to happen as a consequence. But there are some things that the government have simply chosen to impose upon us, and this is one of them. The Brexit consequence I'm talking about here, nothing to do with what Brexit had to be, nothing really to do with the deal either, only what the government have chosen it to be. Now, some imports may have already been stopped due to the extra customs arrangements needed for Brexit anyway, but that isn't the case here. In fact, the first thing I heard about this sort of thing affecting imported goods was when William Shatner, that famous European, wrote to explain how the changes would not allow him to export to the UK anymore. And he isn't based in the EU, he's based in North America. He explained back in October that the new government rules means that VAT is no longer paid for by the buyer as they take receipt. Normally, he'd ship things over, whoever was taking receipt of it would then have to pay the VAT on it. But now the seller has to make sure that they collect it. Obviously the buyer's still paying it, but the seller has to collect it. They have to act as a tax collector and arrange for the tax to be paid to HMRC. There was also a value cap as well. So if the product had a value of less than £15, then you didn't have to pay the VAT. Now it's on there. In addition, there's an administrative cost for filling the forms in, because that's not something that a small business owner will necessarily be able to do for themselves, so they may have to pay a company to deal with it. Shatner, for example, exactly this sort of business person, he said that he'd looked into it and it would cost over £1,000 a year just to file the forms, just for the forms. So there's an extra administrative burden for businesses. The tax and the admin will now be on very low items as well. And then there's the costs of completing the paperwork. All of this adds up to a no-go on exporting to the UK for a lot of small businesses or businesses that may trade a small amount of their goods or a small value worth of their goods to the UK. So they're now not going to be selling unless it's very high-end values where it'd be worth it, or just enough bulk of the items for it to be worth it, to make it economical for them. And that means that the only way we'll be able to get some of these goods, which by definition are going to be fairly niche, because if they're not exporting massive amounts of these things, or they're not very high value, it's sort of lots of little things that a few people will need now and then and won't be able to get. The only way to get it is to hop across to another country to pick it up, which I don't think is really economical. So I think it may even have to be that you combine it with your holiday. Go on holiday to somewhere where you can get these things, pick them up and bring them back. Now, there are arguments for and against this change, as there always going to be. So I say always going to be, that's not always the case. Sometimes the government do something stupid and there wasn't even a problem that they were solving. In this case, you could argue there was a problem. It was pointed out that, for example, with lots of online retail now, there's also a lot of corresponding VAT evasion under the rules. The idea of sending the stuff over and when you go and pick it up at the post office or whatever, you have to pay the VAT. A lot of things get slipped through the net, so to speak. So there's a lot of, well, I say a lot of VAT. There's an amount of VAT that ends up not going to the Treasury because it's not being paid. So what they're saying is, no, now we're going to make the sellers responsible, who have to document all their sales anyway for their own tax purposes in their own country. We'll make them responsible for collecting the VAT and filing the paperwork, and that should cut that out. Now, you could potentially have it phrased that way and go along with it, but for a couple of little flaws. First of all, if the government were really all that bothered about tax receipts from online activities being paid properly, why don't they go for the mother lode and make sure that massive companies like Amazon and Facebook pay their taxes properly? Not a few thousand. Not having large multinational corporations making millions in the country pay less tax than someone on an average wage. Why is it yet again another example of chasing the small fry when there's a huge amount of tax collectible from the big boys, which would be much easier to do? And that wouldn't cause any reduction in choice for the UK. Oh, what are these large companies going to do? Not sell at all in the UK? Go from making massive profits to moderate profits and go, oh no, we'll just lose all our profits? Don't be silly. Secondly, in response, the BBC I saw reported that the government said, and I quote, "The new VAT model ensures goods from EU and non-EU countries are treated in the same way." I mean, that would have happened anyway. It was the same rules. You just changed the rules. Everyone would have had to have followed the rules before, just like they do now. The new tax changes aren't just changing the way VAT is managed for EU businesses, but all international businesses. And yes, it does mean that they're being treated in the same way. Sure. Now, no small business without a large value market in the UK is going to be exporting here, whether they're from Belgium or America. The only valid point the government did make was regarding using the rules to ensure that British-based businesses were not disadvantaged. Because obviously there'd be no way of them getting out of VAT on that. So, okay, you could go along with that. Can't discount that. But the simple consequence is that the goods that will now not be available in the UK, we're not talking about things that could be made in the UK anyway, otherwise it wouldn't be a big deal. It's not that people can just switch to a different seller from inside the UK. The goods are no longer available because they're niche items. That's the point. They're often only available from one seller or a very small number of sellers. If the seller is overseas now, we can't get it. Parts for largely obsolete machines, for example, you've kept going. Star Trek memorabilia from Mr. Shatner for people who are fine with a show about a spaceship that gets into lots of space battles but only has one fixed gun. This is a classic case of applying a lazy solution that throws the baby out with the bathwater. Instead of properly examining different ways to deal with the issue, to look at the problem and go, okay, here are the solutions. Because at the moment, if you looked at that problem and you looked at the solution that's been applied, you'd go, is the solution causing more problems than the original problem? You would say at the moment, yes. Because still not getting that VAT. We're not even getting the goods. So you would look at, well, we need a solution that actually improves the situation for us, and you would look for better solutions. We've got, for example, just to put it in another context to show how ridiculous this particular solution is, a Dutch company that is makes parts for bicycles, I think, that has decided it's no longer sensible to export to the UK. Noted that, so imagine if every country did this. They've got to, if you charged every company an admin fee to be able to export to a particular country, and every single country did that, that'd be 195. So you'd be saying to these small businesses, you've got to register with 195 tax authorities, filling out all that paperwork and all the cost of it. Remember, Shatner said it's going to cost about £1,000 just to file the forms. £195,000. I mean, obviously it depends how much it costs for each country and so on, but if it was an average of that'd be ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So when you look at it in that context, it is ridiculous. And that's the thing. You can see an issue with VAT on small items slipping through the net and decide, okay, well, maybe something should be done to close up this tax loophole. Although, like I said, the amount of money that this loses the Treasury is tiny compared with what they are deliberately losing from allowing massive multinationals to not pay their taxes properly in the UK. But, you know, you see the issue and you decide we need a solution, and we have a solution. But that doesn't mean to say the solution is justified. If it makes Britain a poorer place to live in, you know, we're getting that the necessary impacts of Brexit as it is. It's not like this was the only solution. What sort of idiot comes up with a system where British tax has to be collected by foreign businesses? You're saying to a Dutch company or an American company or a Belgian company, can you collect British taxes and pay it to the British Treasury, please? You what? You're deputising them to be tax collectors. Behave yourself. So the upshot is that lots of UK customers have been receiving messages from suppliers in Europe. People were sharing them with me over the past couple of months and elsewhere, saying that due to Brexit changes, remember this is not due to Brexit, it's due to the changes that have come with Brexit, the government didn't have to do and got nothing to do with the Brexit deal because it doesn't just affect the EU, they're no longer supplying to Britain. Some have just done so temporarily while they get up to speed, while they sort of sort themselves out because they think they might be able to sell enough. But in the meantime, you won't be able to get their products because they need to sort out their tax arrangements. But others won't be at all. It's just like, well, look, it's not economical for us. We can't do it. And some courier companies have also had to increase their prices for UK customers in order to cover the costs of the extra bureaucracy that Brexit has brought them. Again, unnecessary bureaucracy in this case. And although this is hardly the most serious consequence of the extreme Tory Brexit, it does once again highlight how they operate. You know, this shows their modus operandum, how they will always go for what is the easiest solution. Obviously, what happened here is problem was presented. Oh, here's a solution. Oh, we'll go with, oh, does that solution work? Yeah, we'll go with that. No thinking about it. No thinking if there were better solutions, because that would have taken effort. And this is a government that does not want effort. And this will apply to everything that they do. Every problem that comes up, they will just go, solution, first solution that comes to our head, put it in. Easiest solution. You know, we were never going to, you know, get a Brexit deal, for example, where we got an especially good one. But we could have got a better one if we'd have put more effort in instead of just running down the clock and then getting whatever we could at the time. You know, we got a bad Japanese trade deal, for example, because Johnson needed to get a trade deal quickly. He prioritised doing something quickly and easily for political reasons over putting in the hard yards. You know, whenever a problem comes up, and Brexit is going to turn up plenty more, our government will continue to push for the quickest and easiest solution. So I would expect more of these forging ahead with the first clumsy idea that comes to mind without considering whether there are better solutions, because that would require effort and time, and they'd seem to also lack patience. The government suggested that they'd have needed more officials to manage the older rules. Now there's where you're really getting at it, isn't it? Oh, so what you're actually saying is the older system could have been managed. You'd have just needed more officials to make sure that it wasn't slipping through there. So we still could have had these goods being imported into Britain. You just didn't want to because it would have meant needing more officials. Isn't it a shame that we need an extra 50,000 officials, customs officials, just to manage the customs arrangements post-Brexit then? Imagine if we didn't need those extra 50,000 because we'd have remained in the customs union. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.